Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we're super happy to have you here. And if you've been listening and enjoying for a while, I would be super grateful if you would please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best and simplest ways to pay it forward and help others find the show so that they too can tap into the powerful perspectives and positive vibrations we are collectively emanating. The other unique and magical way to share this show is by sending any friends you think would benefit from listening to this podcast our Game with the Universe link at positivehead.com/game. Also listed in the show notes, which will serve them up a quote-unquote random episode when they click it. Just instruct them before clicking the link to close their eyes for a moment and sincerely ask the universe to queue up the episode that contains the insight and perspectives that they most need to hear at this point in their life journey, and then click to listen to whatever episode is synchronistically served up to them. I have heard time and time again from people about the incredible results they received playing the game. So just tell your friends magical results are guaranteed or their karma back. All right, all you positive heads, welcome. Another episode of the Positive Head Podcast. Hello, Dalien.
Oh, yeah. What's up? Welcome back to the Positive Head Podcast, where we...
5 times really fast.
Yeah.
Positive Head Podcast, Positive Head.
And we will give you a free bracelet. Yeah. I just made that up, but yeah, for sure.
If you can do that and record it and send it to us, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go with that. And you record it via... you can actually record right through the podcast page on positivehead.com. And send us a message through your microphone on your computer. If you can say it 5 times really fast and it sounds legit, unlike the way I just did it, we will actually send you a free Positive Head bracelet. There you have it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Right on. Use
Nothing
that as
like
your
a spontaneous promo.
Yeah. Not too bad for Monday morning.
Exactly. Let's kick this Monday week off right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But no, I was just going to say it's a reminder for those of you out there who are, starting to explore I was just thinking, Brandon, because a lot of times when we talk, of course, we're fascinated by all these subjects and obviously, but there's just a lot of people that are probably only just sort of starting to explore all this. And it's, always just fascinating to talk to anyone who is beginning to shift their paradigm. I just say that because a lot of times, I just sort of take for granted some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Really. But I try to think of it like from the point of view of someone who is really just, maybe just beginning to shift their paradigm. And it's just fascinating. It's always just awesome to be able to contribute to that, to help, change minds. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Like you said, we've been at this a long time. I mean, I've been on this kind of spiritual path or awakening path or path of self-growth or self-awareness for, going on 20 years. And so it's one thing to first understand this information and it's another thing to then really live it. And that's what we are all striving to do. It is indeed a daily conscious effort. But
yeah, it's one of the things I was thinking, dude, because your son, when we were sitting around this weekend and your son's friends were over and we were talking to them for a minute about that. And then you ended up talking to that one kid for a minute there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool because it's just, that was one of the things that sort of made me aware of that fun little factoid. But, as our podcast, continues to, sort of expand and, reach new people, it's just nice to be able to keep that as one of our sort of goals in mind, I suppose, is to try and,
Yeah, there's really certainly people that go a lot deeper than we do on some of this information and get into some really heavy stuff. And we definitely play in that from time to time. But I always try and bring it back to, the foundational, reminder sort of stuff and not to get too deep so that, you lose someone who's maybe just starting to open their mind to this sort of content. I feel like personally that's certain, to help reach new people and to keep people who are already on the path, in the vibratory zone of happiness and abundance is really our role, our part of our path. That feels right to me. So, but let's do that. Let's set the vibrational tone for this week. Let's see where we're going to start today. Oh, one thing I wanted to throw out before we dig in is to ask everyone to send in questions. Any of you guys that are regular listeners and ever have had a question or thought, if you could sit down and have lunch with Dalien or I, or, just run into us at a festival or, anything like that where you had a question, what would it be? We want to interact with you guys more. So send in some questions, or just say hi. That works too. We're happy with any of it, but we would like to interact more with you, the listeners.
Absolutely.
So Mr. Dalien, what do we got in way of a story for the day?
This story is one about an ancient civilization that I didn't know about, and it seems not a lot of people know about. But
cool.
I thought that made it worthy of some, recognition here.
Cool.
Some mention. Yeah, it's the civilization of Caral in Peru, which, of course, whenever I think of, ancient Peruvian civilizations, naturally you think of the Incas, right?
Right.
So that's sort of the... that was one of the things that I thought was kind of cool, is that this civilization's got some remarkable achievements, Brandon, for how ancient it is. So that, already makes it like very, very
unique.
Cool, actually. Yeah. One of the things that I can, a couple of facts from the article that I can just quickly mention here. These guys have pyramids that they don't reference how big they are. And I didn't go ahead and look further into that, but they are at least, though, Brandon, as ancient as the Egyptian pyramids.
Oh, cool.
Which is roughly around 3200 BC. So that's really cool. And they've also got some fairly advanced scientific knowledge that they were applying, such as mapping of, I think they were using constellations, but they were using schedules to map out like weather patterns and their forecasts of such.
They had weathermen.
Yeah, to plant for their crops and their agriculture. So that was really cool. They've got, let's see, I can read you here actually a little bit real quick from the article. Another highlight was the civil engineering, which continues to amaze since scientists applied the seismic resistance technology to the over 5,000-year-old constructions.
Wow.
So there's, advanced engineering. They were using wind energy. With some underground wind tunnels that were fueling fires, basically, and making them like blazing hot.
Wow.
Stuff like that. So, that was really cool. And one of the things that this article, also, by the way, which is from EWAO.com, is that they remark they didn't find any weapons or any signs of violence. So this might have been like a fully peaceful... Truly
an advanced civilization.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
What we hope to one day evolve to, right?
Exactly. So, other advances such as pharmacology, they were aware of whichever local plant here, willow, contains an active ingredient that's the same as an aspirin, I suppose. So, things like that. I mean, they were,
Wow, they were just on it.
Yeah, quite up to, up to scratch on their scientific knowledge, applied scientific knowledge and things like that. So that was really cool.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I love hearing about any ancient civilizations, and I just wonder which ones will be discovered, in the future. I just saw something the other day, a story, and it was talking about how they've realized now that there's huge, canyons under the ice in Antarctica. I believe it was, in Antarctica. So bigger than the Grand Canyon, and they think there's ancient lake under there. And, just here's this ancient, they can't believe that they have not found this yet. It's so huge. And so, of course, you hear the stories about civilizations living in the earth up in, the North Pole and so forth. And it makes you wonder what is under all that ice up there. You think of times gone by and the planet has been here for billions of years. That's a long, long time. And so who knows how long ago there could have been some ancient civilization that is long gone and buried under the ice. And as we create global warming and it melts, maybe that'll be one of the cool side effects of the of the damage that we're doing with all this, climate change, unnatural climate change that we're participating in or contributing to. But I think of that, and it made me think of that. Just they're shocked that there's something bigger than the Grand Canyon and an ancient lake. And who knows who lived on that lake? There could have been the greenest area in the world, millennia ago. So definitely a fascinating thing to ponder. So yeah, thanks for sharing that story. Moving along, I would like to ponder a quote for the day. Positive pondering breakdown of the day. And what I have today is by Adyashanti. Hopefully I pronounced it right. And the quote is, "Enlightenment is a destructive process. It has nothing to do with becoming better or being happier. Enlightenment is the crumbling away of untruth. It's seen through the facade or pretense. It's the complete eradication of everything we imagine to be true." So often we talk about enlightenment as this state of, nirvana, or you imagine someone on the supernatural high of connecting with, some powers beyond. And this is a very interesting perspective on enlightenment. And it's essentially taken it in the opposite direction, and not in the sense that it's not a high or there's not clarity. Certainly there is, but it comes from not adding things to your being. What he's suggesting here, not adding things to your being, but actually stripping away all the obstacles that you've placed in your way, your ego, your idea of self, your story that you've told about who and what you are, and your separation, most importantly. That's the real key, I think, that prevents enlightenment. And I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm just a seeker who is trying to find my way and figure it out as I go, and pick up pieces from, great teachers like Adyashanti here, and, also add my own truths that I find along the way. And I think it's such a personal journey. No one can ultimately tell you what it is. It's something that we all have to find for ourselves. But if intuition is correct and serves me correctly, I believe that Adyashanti is onto something here, that it is not so much in adding new things to what you currently are, but rather removing the things that are keeping you from being your highest, truest self. And that is the very simple form of enlightenment, and that all of the masters were achieving, that we've heard about through millennia. It was just stripping away the things that were blocking them from a more direct connection with their source and their higher truth.
Yeah, that's really good. Adyashanti, I had heard of, although I haven't really heard a lot from him, to be honest.
Likewise.
But I had seen a few YouTube videos, and he definitely appears to grasp the concept of enlightenment. I mean, I would say from, the few things, including, this quote that you mentioned, that he does appear to be enlightened, I would say.
Maybe it's not this magical, otherworldly, floating on a, magical carpet type of idea that we often do as humanity. We try and paint a picture of what something is or isn't, and we sort of embellish and, make it more or different than it truly is. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be the first time or the last time that mankind's done that with a concept, right? So I really, really like this line of thinking, and in an effort to explore this line of thinking a little bit further, what I'd like to do now is play a YouTube clip from Adyashanti, and this is on the Adyashanti YouTube page. It's called, the title of the clip is, "What is Enlightenment?" Take a listen.
Enlightenment is simply not perceiving through ego. It's not seeing life or anything. Self, others, your tennis shoes, your dog, your cat, your livelihood, anything. It's just not seeing the world, not seeing everything through the distortion called egoic state of consciousness. That is why it's been likened to the natural state. Natural meaning it's not an alternative lens, distorting lens. It's just perception without a lens. Without a distortion. ultimately that's what enlightenment is. It's perception without distortion. Whether it's perceiving the nature of what you think is yourself, which there isn't one, whether it's whether it is perceiving a thought, whether it is perceiving a feeling, whether it is perceiving a situation, whether it's perceiving your relationship, it is simply perceiving not through the lens of ego. That's what enlightenment is. And it's useful to at least have some basis of understanding in this. Because an awakening, or in Zen what they call a satori experience, seeing beyond the veil, itself, seen without the veil of ego, may be the true perception, the natural perception, the undistorted perception. But what most people want to do is they think enlightenment is like an unending satori experience, right? An unending enlightenment experience, an unending awakening experience, an unending experience. But it's not an unending experience at all. It has nothing to do with an unending experience. That misunderstanding will get you to do more tail chasing than you ever dreamed possible. In the end, enlightenment has very little to do with enlightenment experiences. It is simply not perceiving through the lens of ego. That's what it is. And there's no doubt, it's pretty good not perceiving through the lens of ego. It's happiness. It's peace. It's the end of your search. Not that you find anything except sanity. Not that you attain anything except seeing things as they actually are. And that's what nirvana is, seeing things as they actually are. So when you see things as they naturally are, you see everything is one. And the nature of anything and everything is not nearly as substantial as you thought. Its nature is emptiness. The nature of anything is nothingness. The nature of anything and everything is that it's all insubstantial. And so these aren't some altered states of consciousness, you see. From the enlightened perspective, everything else is an altered state of consciousness. Does that make sense? Ego is the if you want to have altered states of consciousness, most people are already in one of the more wild altered states of consciousness. It's called egoic state of consciousness. It's a wildly altered state of consciousness. It gets you to perceive things that aren't there. It gets you to see enemies where there aren't any. It gets you to see dualities where there aren't any. It gets you to have things like a self-image when there isn't a self there to begin with. It gets you to have certain thoughts about yourself when in actuality the only thing that could be called a self at all is simply the thoughts you have about it. So if you want an altered state of consciousness, I'd stick with ego. It's about as advanced as you're going to get. It is existence, doing its damnedest, its best job at altering consciousness. And yet in spirituality, somehow, spirituality got associated with altered states of consciousness. You can alter your state of consciousness. Lots of the types of spirituality that people practice, they'll alter your state of consciousness. You can chant God's name for 4 or 5 hours. You'll notice your consciousness starts to alter, change. You'll feel different. Things will look different. All sorts of things you can do to alter your state of consciousness. But the funny thing is, enlightenment has nothing to do with any of that. Enlightenment is the unaltered state of consciousness. Consciousness needs no alteration to see that everything is one. Since everything is one, you don't need an altered state of consciousness to perceive that everything is one. You need an altered state of consciousness to perceive that everything is actually more than one. Like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 1,000. So in these moments, in Zen they call them satori's, we often call them awakenings. In the awakening, the valuable thing about the awakening is how much of egoic consciousness falls away in the awakening. In the end, the next week or the next month, that's all that's going to matter. Because the experience, the sense of aha, which you get upon the awakening to your true nature, aha, I thought I was that, but that I thought I was just an imagination. What a relief. It's a great aha. But you're not going to have an aha forever, are you? A week later, your aha is going to be quite gone. Right? You ever notice that? You have the biggest revelation in the world. Oh my God! And then a week later it's like, yeah, well, you know. So it's not the quality of the aha sustaining, because it won't sustain itself. Which is great, because that means you can always have another one. The significant thing about those moments, though, those satori's or awakening to your true nature, is how much of the egoic consciousness falls away. That's because that's what you're going to live with, right? That's what's going to be with you the next week, the next month, the next year, maybe the next lifetime. And as the point of orientation, or the what to focus on, since egoic state of consciousness, duality, seeing things as duality, through the lens of duality, it's actually something that must be constantly maintained. The egoic state of consciousness actually takes a great amount of energy and a great amount of effort. Since it's not true, it has to keep building this falseness constantly, otherwise it will end, right? Because what is not true ends as soon as it's not being fueled. And so illusion, or the egoic state of consciousness, must constantly be fueled like a fire, right? Or like a coal stove, which you must keep shoveling fuel into it. So the useful spiritual disciplines are simply ways of not putting more energy into egoic consciousness. That's basically what they're doing. Stop fueling it. Stop fueling it, and it can't sustain itself.
Before we continue on with today's episode, for those of you interested in getting more fantastic fungi in your life, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about a friend of mine's brand new company, The Great Mother. Recently, I have been drinking The Great Mother's superfood mushroom coffee alternative called Ritual, as well as regularly taking their awesome Ally microdoses, and I am truly loving both. As you probably know, these days, many of the world's highest achievers and performers swear by microdosing. The problem is it can still be difficult to get a hold of magic mushrooms. That's why when my friend reached out, who lives in an area and country where legalization is not a problem like it was in the past, and said he'd be willing to offer microdoses to my listeners, I wanted to pass the word along. Ally microdoses are 100% organic. And in addition to a small amount of the magic active ingredient, they also contain functional mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, and other brain boosters like bacopa. Ally is essentially a full spectrum nootropic. And of course, the coffee alternative Ritual doesn't contain magic mushrooms, but it has an array of the best organic functional mushrooms in the world. And, with functional mushrooms, it's really important to get them from the highest integrity sources. And whereas some other highly popular mushroom coffee alternatives on the market only contain a few varieties of functional mushrooms in their actual ingredients, Ritual has 7. Not only does it contain more types, it also contains 3 to 4 times the amount that the big brands have in each serving, and it tastes amazing. I actually like to have it on its own as well as mixing it into my coffee sometimes as well. However, since this is definitely a unique offering, there are a few steps. First, just reach out and request to follow the private page, thegreat.mother on Instagram. Once you've been accepted to follow, just message what you're interested in getting and someone will get back to you. Yeah, so here Dalien, he goes into things obviously much further than just the quote, and it rings so true with me. I'm sure it rings true with a lot of our listeners. You know, ego, everybody's greatest obstacle, or edging God out. And enlightenment, what did he say, is simply not seen through the ego. It's perception without a lens, the lens of the ego, without that distortion. And of course, once you start perceiving in that manner, you find there's no self. It's all one here. It's all mirrors here. And, of course, he talked about the Zen concept of Satori, seeing beyond the veil. And that's essentially what you're doing. You have a veil. The egoic consciousness is the veil between you and clear vision. It's giving you a blurry resolution on reality. And you can look all around the planet and see, I mean, it's everywhere, this blurred vision. And, very, very interesting too. I'm talking, Dalien, about enlightenment being an unending Satori experience, which is, this kind of like mystical state that you can achieve where you're just, high as a kite on, your
own thoughts. And,
yeah.
Right, exactly.
And that's something that certainly can happen. And certainly a lot of people have had that sort of experience, but, he talked about it really having very little to do with these sorts of experiences. That certainly can happen, but it's not the end all. It's just a byproduct. Once again, it's actually this empty state of emptiness. There's no altered state of consciousness, and egoic consciousness being the altered state, which is, once again, it's just like flipping it completely. And it's really makes so much sense and rings so true with me. Ego gets you, of course, to see things like dualities and enemies and things that aren't really there. So that's an altered state, right? So, when you're seeing things clearly, you're looked at as the one that's crazy oftentimes in a society where everyone is looking through the veil, or is their vision is obscured by the veil. So it becomes, that's what's normal. And if you're seen with that veil lifted, now you're the one that appears off to the people who are actually seeing things unclearly. So, very, very fascinating perspective that he shares here. And of course, I also like how he talks about how revelations come and go. You'll have those aha moments, and then he talked about a week later, it's like, because what's happening? Your vibration is constantly shifting. I always say it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So you're going to have breakthroughs on your own personal path to enlightenment, of having moments of just this divine connection that feels blissful as, anything you've ever experienced, and magical, and everything's so alive. And then next thing you know, the bills start showing up again, and reality hits you. The alarm goes off for 8 a.m. to go to work. And what happens to your vibration? It comes back down. And what I think he's suggesting here is that's okay. That's a part of the process. And it's not some altered state that you need to walking on clouds at all times. You're just slowly, 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. And I think over time, we continue to stay in this more elevated state of consciousness more and more and more. It becomes our natural state. And I think that's what we're going to see happen en masse to, countless people on the planet. I personally believe we're at a point in our evolution where there's an opportunity for huge amounts of growth in a short period of time compared to how it typically works in this 3D, physical reality. And we're all kind of here for the big show, and also to upgrade ourselves and take advantage of the opportunity that is energetically available in this kind of unique window here on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that everything you chose today by Adyashanti is really, really awesome. A great thing to bring to the podcast because this particular person's, wisdom and your insight together make for just, another cool dimension that we can explore because it's just, it's awesome how he describes enlightenment in terms that I can very much agree with and relate to, like, again, it's one of these people like someone who, I think of as kind of being in that same wavelength, Eckhart Tolle, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I kind of relate a lot of those same concepts or, they talk a lot about it, a lot of the same kind of stuff.
Constantly be fueled or it falls away.
Right, exactly. So I think it's just so awesome that someone like Adyashanti can use words to point to something that's essentially, well, not really something. It's nothing in a sense, but they're using words to sort of direct you in a particular line of thought. And it makes me think that I can glimpse enlightenment. And perhaps like, this person or a lot of people who I know are like this are very humble. I'm someone who is naturally, I can have my temper and my ego, of course, but I can also, relax into the awareness that like, maybe I don't need to react to everything that goes on around me. I am the awareness, not necessarily this ego that needs to, define itself constantly or asserts itself always in some way or another.
Right.
So it makes me think that I can glimpse enlightenment and that I can move into that state without necessarily feeling like I have to call myself an enlightened person,
Totally.
So it's just awesome that, these people can make that sort of thing very practical and very real, something that you can, really make a part of your everyday life.
Well, enlightenment, I've heard it said before, it's, look at the word itself. What are you doing? You're lightening up.
Exactly. And that was one of the things, dude, that I thought was really cool because when we were listening to this clip, like the one thing that I thought stood out to me is I was just thinking of the idea of happiness, right? As he said the word happiness, like at some point in there. But it's like, it's happiness. And that's what it is that simple happiness of not being burdened by any sort of thought that is really just obstructing that pure perception, right? He talks about how like, the ego perception is the altered state, right? Mm-hmm. So of course, just easing that resistance, easing that tension, letting all that crap go essentially, it's just great to allow you to reconnect with that very simple sort of enlightened, blissful state, really.
Absolutely.
Which is what he's talking about.
Well, I guess that gets us down to it for today, Dalien. We got some good tunes to leave the good people with.
Yes, we have the lovely angelic voice of Alienario.
Ah, okay. Lovely.
Yeah, she's got some very deep spiritual sounding tracks. Just a lot of her music, evokes that kind of like sacred
an enlightening
vibe. Yeah,
feeling?
Exactly. So yeah.
What do you have? What song?
It's called Eastern Sun.
Oh,
it's a pretty chill track actually, but it's got that very cool, peaceful vibe. So yeah.
Ah, very nice. Very nice.
Again, eastern sun, melt the cold from my bones, curtain rise, take the darkness from my eyes, breathing in, pulling life into my lungs as a child, I am born. Again, eastern sun, melt the cold from my bones, curtain rise, take the darkness from my eyes, breathing in, pulling life into my lungs as a child, I am born. eastern sun, melt the cold from my bones. Curtain rise, take the darkness from my eyes. Breathing in, pulling life into my lungs. As a child I am born again.